EU4 was released on August 13th, 2013, and by this point, it's more than a 10-year-old game. With the release of the latest DLC, King of Kings, and the sort of announcement for even more DLCs coming after that, the question is, what does the future have in store for EU4? Hi everyone, and welcome to today's video where we're going to be discussing just that, the future of EU4, starting with its actual release to how I started playing all the DLCs that have been launched so far, what we know or potentially know about EU5 and when it could possibly be releasing, and how long do we have left to play EU4. So like I said at the start, EU4 was released on August 13th, 2013. I've been playing sort of a little bit after that. You know, the first DLC for EU4 was Conquest of Paradise, which released, I think it was November that same year, you know, right after, just a couple of months after EU4 dropped. And I do remember that when I started playing, this DLC already existed, and I did pick it up right along with EU4 as I got it. But, you know, I didn't start playing just as that DLC released. I remember, you know, Wealth of Nations, which was the second DLC, you know, coming out pretty soon after I started playing. I can see right here that it was launched in May 2014, so I did start playing sort of the winter after EU4 dropped 2014, so I've pretty much been playing EU4 for about 9 years now. Now, you know, Conquest of Paradise introduced a bunch of stuff, you know, for the natives, for the New World, the random New World as well. The native mechanics, you know, they do migration and stuff like that, some buildings, some government reforms, or not government reforms, but reforming your government was launched. And you know, the first DLC, a lot of the stuff from it, you know, has been added to subsequent DLCs after that. You know, what was it, the one, the recent one that updated the natives and stuff like that? I think it was Emperor or something like that. But yeah, that DLC isn't too relevant for now, I guess. After that, it was Wealth of Nations. You know, there was some trading stuff going on with Venice and whatnot, piracy, privateering, moving your main trade nodes and stuff like that. You know, a bunch of changes with trade companies as well, and stuff like that. So once again, you know, these earlier DLCs, or at least the first two, weren't too, you know, they didn't bring major mechanic changes. But then, you know, we had Res Publica right after that, which launched June 2014. You know, some updates to the Netherlands and stuff like that, dictatorship, republics. Basically, you know, as the title of the DLC is, Res Publica, it was sort of an update to republics. You got the factions, you got the, you know, sort of oranges versus status mechanics and stuff like that. But after that, you know, the fourth DLC that came in October 2014, you know, is still one of the player favorite DLCs. And, you know, whenever someone asks like, yo, I got like, I don't know, $50, which DLCs do I pick up for EU4? Now, of course, the answer to that is get the subscription. It's only $5 a month and you get all DLCs. But if you really want to buy DLCs full price at that, you know, definitely Art of War is one of the ones that always gets recommended first, right? You know, you got the 30 Years War mechanics, the Napoleon era and whatnot, you know, sorting from sieges, giving objectives to allies and stuff like that. Lots of other diplomacy actions as well, you know, the army templates and stuff like that. So really, really nice, you know, updates to marches and vassals as well. Yeah, you know, supporting rebels, fighting for your subjects, CBs and stuff like that, client states. So really, really super important stuff was added to Art of War, which brings us to El Dorado, the first DLC that I personally remember being, you know, sort of excited about. Like I said, I did start playing right after Conquest of Paradise dropped, but, you know, during Conquest of Paradise, Wealth of Nations, Res Publica, Art of War, I was sort of a casual player that booted up EU4 every now and then. Maybe I would say, you know, once or twice a month, something like that, you know, try and get a campaign started, you know, read some tutorials and stuff like that. So I definitely wasn't a good player and I wasn't playing it too heavily. But after El Dorado dropped, which, you know, once again focused on the on the colonizers and the colonial nations and the New World guys and stuff like that, you know, exploration, colonization, all of those changes, all of those mechanics, you know, specifically, you know, let's say it was for Portugal and Castile or whatnot. That's when I really started getting into the game. So right as El Dorado dropped, and after that, I've been you know, a real EU4 player. You know, it pretty much became my main game after that. You know, I played it I would say, you know, maybe not every day. You know how EU4 is. You know, you play for a few days, you do a campaign or two, and then you just leave it for a week or two, then you come back, and that's when I really started playing. So I do hold, you know, El Dorado fondly in my heart or whatever. But after that was Common Sense. You know, we're sort of 6 or 7 DLCs in at this point. This was released on in June, I think. So yeah, Common Sense, a bunch of changes to the governments and stuff like that, the theocracies, the monarchies, you know, updates to Protestantism and stuff like that, HRE updates as well, so we can see some Buddhist stuff over here. So Common Sense, another not that major DLC, but you know, after that we got the Cossacks, which sort of focused on you know, the horde areas and stuff like that, and you know, Eastern Europe a little bit. The Cossacks estates, you know, estates were still the oldest states, of course. Here, you know, new native policies, horde unity and raising, some changes to Tengri native policies and stuff like that. So a pretty good DLC. After that, we got Mare Nostrum, which was another, you know, sort of Europe naval focused DLC, pretty much naval focused DLC. You know, the Barbary guys got piracy stuff, you know, raiding coasts and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. April 2016 we're at right now. After that, it was Rights of a Man, which is another, you know, DLC I fondly remember from this time period. Of course, it was like 7 years ago, so I pretty much don't remember anything. I don't know what I had for breakfast yesterday, but you know, changes to fetishist nations, Coptic nations, ruler personalities, leader traits. You can abdicate and disinherit. You know, you can sort the, you know, select the subject thing, what they do, whether they siege, they attack, developing provinces for subjects and building buildings in them. So lots of stuff to subjects. Revolutionary republics got the factions. You know, the Ottomans got the harem, militarization for Prussia, so debasing currency, great power status, so lots of nice features added to Rights of Man. Then after that, we got the Mandate of Heaven. I remember waiting for this DLC very specifically, following along with the Dev Diaries and stuff like that, being excited, you know, for the updates to East Asia, you know, the Ages, the Golden Eras, the Ming Emperor mechanics, tributaries, Manchu banners, Qing and stuff like that. So you know, another super fun DLC for me right here. I feel like this, you know, after Art of War, there was really a golden age of EU4 DLCs. You know, El Dorado, Common Sense, the Cossacks, Mare Nostrum, Rights of Man, Mandate of Heaven. Then we got the Third Rome as well, another, you know, very cool DLC. Changes to, you know, Tsardoms, principalities, Orthodox stuff, the Siberian frontier thing with Russia. And this is actually when missions or mission trees were introduced, I think. Not really sure right there. I think it was, but I don't know if you guys have been playing for this long. You know, missions before Third Rome, I think, were just you know, the decisions. It was in the decisions tab right there, and the mission was like you know, ally someone, get prestige. And then you try and do that, boom, you take the decision, mission accomplished, right? But at this point, you know, mission trees were introduced, and I think it's a feature that by this point we can't imagine the game without. But after Third Rome, we got Cradle of Civilization, changes to the Middle East over here, you know, new governments, the Timurid stuff, the Mamluk government, Persian theocracy, tribal federations, you know, trade policies, Islamic schools, professionalism, exploit development, the ICTA taxation ability, and yeah, lots of nice bonuses to Cradle of Civilization right here. So yeah, I do think this is where sort of the golden age of EU4 DLCs stops. I would say it's from Art of War to Third Rome, Cradle of Civilization, and then this next one, Rule Britannia, were kind of mid, according to me personally. Of course, everyone has their own opinion, but Rule Britannia, of course, changes to the Great Britain region, or yeah, whatever you want to call it, in Ireland as well. You know, the new missions, Industrial Revolution, innovativeness, still a controversial thing in the community, was introduced to this. You know, the naval doctrines, Anglicanism and stuff like that. Pretty cool. After that, we got Dharma, actually, another DLC that I did like quite a lot. You know, unique government reforms, new trading stuff, new Indian updates, upgrading centers of trade, charter companies, which the AI used to use a lot back in the day. Now, not so much. After Dharma, we got Golden Century, you know, going back to another DLC for colonization, you know, ejecting minorities from colonization. That was pretty strong after this DLC was launched. You know, the orders for the Iberian nations, pirate republics were added, you know, flagships, naval barraging, and other nice changes to the Iberian and Berber guys as well. After that, after Golden Century, we got the Emperor DLC, which I still think is the best DLC to ever grace EU4. This, right after Emperor dropped, is when I already started considering you know, doing a little content for you for, because by that point I did consider myself, you know, at least decent at the game. You know, it launched in June 2020, so by this point, after 3 years, and yeah, I hold this DLC very fondly, still my favorite DLC to this day. And after this, like I said, is when I started seriously considering making videos for you guys. But you guys know Emperor, a massive update to pretty much the entirety of Europe, to the Pope, you know, the new HRE system, the new revolution system, Hussite hegemonies, new mission trees, massive mission trees for France and Austria. Of course, after that, France has gotten a completely new one, but even at that point, they were super strong. You know, Defender of the Faith, the Council of Trent, provoking rebellions and stuff like that. Lots of changes to the map, especially in West and Central Europe, as state mechanics were revamped during this point as well. And a major DLC. Even though everyone recommends Art of War the most, my number one DLC recommendation is definitely Emperor. Now, after the greatest DLC in EU4, in my opinion, comes one of the, well, I guess you could say worst DLCs ever, even though that's not what I personally think. That's what I guess the community thinks if you ask it. But of course, everyone knows I'm talking about Leviathan, that dropped you know, 2021 alongside patch 131, which I do think was the bigger problem rather than the DLC itself. So by this point, I had already started making videos. I uploaded my first video on January 26th, 2021, and Leviathan dropped in April. And I do remember, you know, by that point, you know, my channel was slowly growing, you could say. And right as Leviathan was about to drop, you know, I would say a few weeks ago, I was like, okay, so I'm sort of a content creator here. You know, my videos weren't banging or whatever. They had like 5 or 10k views. 10k views was like a huge video for me. And I remember emailing the people at Paradox being like, hey, I'm the Red Hawk, you know, an upping and coming EU4 content creator. These are the types of videos I make. This is, you know, how many views my channel gets and stuff like that. I was wondering if I could get like potentially early access for Leviathan or whatnot to test it out. You know, I was so like scared writing that email and stuff like that, man. But you know, the people at Paradox, you know, shout out Jonathan, they were super nice, and he was like, yeah, we were already, you know, we already had you in mind. Here's the DLC, blah blah blah. So that's when I, you know, really started feeling like a content creator. Like, all right, you know, this shit's getting real. I have early access here. I can take a look at the DLC. And honestly, man, even with all the bugs that Leviathan brought and stuff like that, I personally didn't experience any issues whatsoever updating to 131 and playing Leviathan. And let me clear up some common misconceptions right here. Of course, this is the worst rated EU4 DLC, and I think at one point it was the worst rated product on Steam. But the issue is not with the DLC itself. Leviathan is actually a really good DLC, added really nice stuff. The new favor mechanics, the new regency options, the new changes to colonial nations. You know, you can pick what type of nations they are: concentrate, dev, pillage capital, expand infrastructure, centralized states. You know, the totemist religion, monuments were added here. Lots of very cool stuff was added to this DLC, except that the launch, you know, of the, not the DLC itself, but the patch itself was the problem. And of course, even people that didn't buy the DLC, if they had a problem with the patch, they left the review on the Leviathan DLC page, and to this day it's still so badly received. Even though the DLC is actually really good, that patch launch was messed up, lots of bugs left in, and you know, the Paradox got a lot of flack for it. And still to this day, you know, you see posts like on Reddit or whatever, yo, should I buy Leviathan? Is it actually good? The answer for any DLC, not just Leviathan, from me is yes, you should. All the DLCs are pretty great. You know, don't stay on older patches. Update to the latest patch. Sometimes it will be buggy, sometimes it won't. But yeah, this was the first launch by Paradox Tinto, the new independent EU4 studio, which of course I'll touch more on later. Unfortunately, it didn't go that well for them, but I do think those guys learned their lesson. And after that, it's been pretty good, which leads us to Origins. After that, it was Origins, you know, fall 2021, I think it was. Lots of changes to the African nations, you know, changes to Jewish religion, Adran, Ethiopia, Kilwa, Congo, Mali, Mutapa, Songhai, smaller mission trees. You know, this was more like a content pack rather than a full-on DLC, but still pretty nice nonetheless. Really nice changes to the African guys, which brings us to Lions of the North, which dropped last year. A super popular DLC. Lots of changes to all the Scandinavian guys, along with, the Baltic guys, Poland, Lithuania as well. Awesome mission trees added to them. I would call this one a minor DLC as well, honestly, a flavor pack or something like that. But Lands of the North was super, super fun, which brings us to our final major DLC, Domination, which was released, of course, earlier this year. Major changes to the Ottomans, Japan, Russia, Spain, France, Great Britain, minor nations, special unit types, flavor events, and stuff like that. So another major DLC, which I do like quite a lot and is super, super important. Which brings us to our final, expansion. I wouldn't call it a DLC. Once again, more of a flavor or immersion pack. King of Kings, which for me released yesterday, November 6th. The day is November 7th. I think you guys will be seeing this video on the 12th. The latest flavor pack, which brought a lot of changes to Persia, the Mamluks, the Byzantines, lots of other smaller, less relevant nations, Armenia, Georgia, Arabia, Yemen, Ardabil, Akuyunlu, Karakuyunlu, and stuff like that. Super, super nice DLC so far. Everyone seems to be having a lot of fun with it, and so am I. So with that, we've had, in just about a little over 10 years of U4 existence, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21 downloadable content thingies, DLCs, or expansions, or whatever you want to call it. Pretty much to a year, a major one in the early part of the year and a smaller one in the later part of the year, which is sort of the way it's always been, except during, the COVID time and the restructuring of Paradox Tinto. Which brings us to the present day. King of Kings just dropped, and, in that DLC and the final dev diary or whatnot, their plans were announced for even more DLCs or expansions coming in 2024, which sort of confused me personally and a lot of other people as well. Now, right after Lions of the North dropped or whatever, we were assuming that there would be like 2 or 3 more DLCs and stuff like that, right? Everyone knew the region of focus pretty much for those DLCs. We were like, all right, so after Lands of the North, we got to get to the Middle East, we got to get to South and Central America, and after that, maybe the Hordes or something like that, and I think we're done with U4. I think that's what pretty much everyone was thinking, including me. But, in this final King of Kings dev diary, there was lots of mentions about, okay, so this is what the devs are saying, like, we know you guys were hoping to see some other guys like Yemen or whatever get updated, or the Hordes or the Timurids and stuff like that, and they were like, don't worry, we got plans for those guys next year. And I was like, those guys, all right, I guess we'll get those guys. But then if the Hordes are left, if the Timurids are left, if the guys in in South America are left, in Central America, after that opens the question for guys in the Balkans as well. How many more regions are gonna get, updated to the standard of other regions before we're done, right? So, going back to what I said just a few minutes ago, after Lions of the North, we thought there would be like 3 more DLCs, but since then, there's already been 2 more, Domination and King of Kings, and right now we're potentially looking at like 4 or 5 more, right? And after Lions of the North dropped, this was sort of around the time right after PDXCon, which I did attend. There was a panel about U4 and stuff like that. Johan was there along with a bunch of devs, and there was a lot of questions coming in from the audience about future DLCs and EU5 and stuff like that. And at the time, I personally was assuming that we were gonna get Victoria 3 in 2023, which we did, or in 2022, I suppose. And then I was like, okay, so after Victoria 3, U5, it's next. It's gotta be. I was like, they're probably gonna announce it 2023, right? Give a little bit of time to Victoria 3 to, promote it and stuff like that for people to get into it. And after that, they're gonna release it, 2024. But now it is 2023. U5 hasn't been announced. In fact, 2 DLCs have dropped since then, and more DLCs have technically been announced. Still no sign of EU5, right? So my, prediction of EU5 being announced this year and being released next year hasn't come true. And the truth is, I don't think it's gonna be announced next year either. With all the information that we have right now, of at least a couple of more, at least 2 more DLCs coming, and I think we're gonna see a sort of a CK2 type thing here, on DLC being dropped for EU4, then radio silence for like 6 months from the team, and then EU5 gets announced. But the reality is, I think right now at least, EU5 is gonna get announced 2025. That's the way things are looking like, right? Let's say we get 4 more DLCs 2 more in 2024, 2 more in 2025. We might actually not get an announcement until 2026 either, which at that point, you know, EU4 is going to be like a 13-year-old game. And, you know, right now, the earliest release year that I can think of is 2025, but don't count out 2026 or 2027 either, which, you know, sort of moves up the timeline to where everyone was expecting EU5 to drop for a couple of years. You know, I thought we'd be seeing it, honestly, this year. We didn't. And now I know we're not seeing it next year either. So, yeah, announcement 2025, release 2026. That's my prediction for now. And with all that said, I think that brings us to EU5 even more. You know, when is it gonna release? What do we sort of know that's gonna be in it? What is not gonna be in it? And first of all, how much does the community actually want it? Now, in recent times, you know, this past year or so, I would say, I've seen a lot more comments from people online saying, listen, at this point, we don't want EU5, right? EU4 has been so good, so, you know, everything has been so mastered and meticulously planned and stuff like that, that we don't want EU5. Just remaster EU4, you know, update it to the latest engines or whatever, make it run on multiple cores, and, you know, give us everything. I'll pay for it again. I just, you know, I really like EU4. I don't want EU5 and stuff like that. And interestingly enough, in March this year, I did do a poll asking people, you know, do you actually want EU5 or no, I want to stick with EU4, and you know, the answer was surprising to say the least. You know, there was quite a, you know, couple of thousands of participants, and you know, 58% of you said I want EU5, but 42% also said no, I don't want EU5, I just want to stick with EU4, which is a lot closer than I thought it would be. Now, of course, this does stem from the fact that we've had EU4 for so long, you know, pretty much more than 10 years now, and people are, you know, sort of attached to the game as well and stuff like that. But I do sort of think it comes from a different place as well, looking at the launches of Crusader Kings 3 and Victoria 3 as well. Now, don't get me wrong, those are great games and stuff like that, but when they did launch, of course, this is pretty expected, but they were, and I guess still are, both of them, man, pretty bare bones, right? And a lot of people are expecting that from EU5 as well. You know, that is the whole, you know, model of these Paradox games or whatever you want to call it. So we're not even going to get into that. But, you know, people are thinking, how many things is EU5 even going to have at launch, right? How long are we going to have to wait for EU5 to get good before we actually start playing it instead of EU4? You know, a lot of people, I think, will be sticking with EU4. I do think it will still have a pretty sizable community even after EU5 launches, and EU4 is the type of game that, man, I think, you know, after 10 years pass after EU5's release, I do still think we're gonna have at least 1,000 people, you know, on the Steam charts still playing EU4. But the thing that people really don't want is, like, you know, the good stuff that EU4 already has, right? All of the things that are really good about EU4, you know, should already be included in EU5 right at the start, right? We're sort of expecting to see a less bloated, but still main feature packed EU5, right? Like, don't take away, I don't know, let's say, I don't know, government mechanics, you know, government reforms, right? A very important feature of EU4, for example. Don't take it away from EU5 and then just add it back in later DLCs, right? We want all the good stuff that already that EU4 already has included in EU5. And you know, going over to Crusader Kings 3 at least, I feel like there really has been sort of a lack of DLCs ever since that launch, right? You know, there has been some nice updates and whatnot, but yeah, I feel like it's taken them quite a while to get the ball rolling on that, right? So, you know, after EU5 launches, we really don't want to see one DLC a year where, you know, let's say EU5 launches and then we got one DLC, the focus is, I don't know, Great Britain, and then that's it, right? We want to see, you know, I think 2 DLCs a year, just like EU4 has, you know, one major expansion at the start of the year, you know, new mechanics being added, new stuff like that, and then a minor DLC at the end of the year, just like right now, focusing on a specific region, updating, you know, certain nations and stuff like that. And, you know, based on that, I do think, you know, EU5 can get the ball rolling quite fast after it launches, but let's hope it doesn't launch too bare bones, is what I'm saying. We want the main stuff that EU4 has in EU5. We don't want stuff removed and then added back to DLCs. We just want new stuff added, you know, flavor for nations, new mechanics, and whatnot. But with that said, let's discuss a little bit some of the things that we know about EU5, which honestly isn't a lot at all. Like I said at the panel at PDXCon last year, there was lots of questions about EU5. The main question was, is it being developed? And of course, these guys, the developers, aren't going to answer that. But I do think, with Paradox Tinto existing, that whole team down there of who knows how many employees working on specifically the Europa Universalis franchise, let's say, all of them can't be working on DLCs, man. There's gotta be like, a dedicated team that works on, EU4 expansions and whatnot, and then there's gotta be a bunch of guys working on EU5, right? It can't just be, everyone works on EU4, then stops, and then they work on EU5, right? At least that's what I'm thinking. I really don't know how game development works. I'm just talking, out my ass here, let's say. But yeah, there was lots of questions about, when EU4 is releasing, is it being worked on? There was no answer from the devs on that, but I do think we can all assume at least that it is being worked on in some capacity, I guess, maybe a broad outline by this point. What direction do these guys want the games to go? How are missions going to work? We can sort of assume how mission trees and decisions and government mechanics are going to focus in a EU5 based on, the mission trees since Origins, I would say. Origins, Lands of the North, Domination, King of Kings, they've had very different mission tree types to the previous ones, since Third Realm, branching missions, more ways to complete missions and stuff like that. A lot more focus on unique army regiments, unique government reforms. So I do think, every nation feeling and being even more unique is going to be a major focus in EU5. So yeah, we can sort of see the direction it's gonna go, but really that's about all we know so far. More things that I'm pretty certain we are gonna see or aren't gonna see in EU5 is one of my favorite things about the game, and this is very divisive. A lot of the community doesn't like it, but mana, monarch points, admin, diplo, mill. The devs really don't like this mechanic. We can see, the sort of the lack of it, or the different way that it works in some of these other games. It's present in a different way, I guess, in Imperator Rome. In Victoria, it's not something you stack, but it's something you could gain and lose, the modifiers and stuff like that. I really actually don't know how it works in Crusader Kings, but I do think we're gonna see no monarch points in EU5, man. So I really wonder how some things are going to work, since they're pretty much one of the most important mechanics in the game, monarch points. So I'm wondering, how could they be replaced? Are they going to be fluctuating and stuff like that? And then to do things, use up monthly monarch points, sort of being a mechanic more like money in EU4, where you lose it, you gain it, you have a certain gain, and then you use it on stuff, or stack it, or it being automatically lost, versus the current what you want to call it, monarch point mechanic. So I do think we're definitely not gonna see that. Something else that I do think we're definitely gonna see is pops population. Once again, another thing, the second thing that I mentioned, and the second thing I disagree on. A lot of people do want population pops in EU5, and I do think we're gonna see it, if I'm being honest. Once again, this is not something I personally want. Now, of course, I'm just speaking about myself right here. There's not a right or wrong opinion. This is just my opinion. I don't think it's either right or wrong. Everyone has, can think for themselves whether they want pops, whether they want mana, or stuff like that. But I do think we're going to see that system in EU5. Not like it is in Victoria 3. I don't think it's going to be that specific. But I do think, we're going to have the estates or classes or whatever play a more important role in that. And I do think they're going to be more sort of like the ones in Imperator rather than the ones in Victoria 3. So, once again, these things are just my opinion. It's not fact. This is based off what the devs have said. Specifically speaking about that little EU4 panel at PDXCon, and dev comments being thrown around here and there on Twitter, on the forums, on Reddit and whatnot, in Discords and stuff like that. So no one has said anything, no one has confirmed or leaked anything, but you can sort of deduce based on some of the things that they've said. So yeah, I'm thinking no mana, I'm thinking yes pops, and another thing, I do think we're gonna see a major change of the UI and sort of the whole appearance of EU5, because we can see the way that the Paradox games, the direction that they're taking sort of after Crusader Kings 3, and specifically talking about CK3 and Victoria 3 right here. The way the games look, the way that their UI is, I feel like a lot more beginner friendly. Let's be real, EU4 is probably the least beginner friendly out of all of the Paradox games, but that whole UI with hidden you know, things that you need to do behind a button. You know, in Crusader Kings 3 you have that number, in Victoria 3 you have that number, then you click on it, then it tells you what you need to do, and then you got a tooltip here and you hover, and then you got a little circle, and then that pops up another tooltip, and if you go to that tooltip, under the highlighted thing on the tooltip, you hover on that, it opens a third one. So I feel like those things, they may be beginner friendly and stuff like that, and that may be, you know, the whole vision, the, you know, macro plan of PDX games or whatever, but I do think U4's UI is the most superior UI in any Paradox game ever. The whole tooltip thing makes perfect sense. The whole notification system makes perfect sense. But once again, this is something that's not gonna be in there. Once again, the third thing I mentioned and the third thing I disagree with versus the devs right here. So yeah, I'm thinking U5's UI is gonna be looking like Crusader Kings 3, like Victoria 3, and I actually don't like that. The devs seem to do like it quite a lot. I mentioned this once again in the video we talked about just a couple of weeks ago, where I reviewed, you know, the final dev diary for King of Kings right here. I touched a little bit on this topic, but yeah, I don't think U5 is gonna look like U4 at all. And once again, the fourth and final thing that I do think we can anticipate to be true, and once again, 4 out of 4 disagreements with me right here, but and this is just a very minor thing. Some people love it, some people hate it, but I do think we're gonna unfortunately see the zoom in from political to terrain map mode, which I really dislike in Crusader Kings and Victoria 3, but oh well, that's just a minor thing, and hopefully it can be fixed with mods. So those are, you know, the 4 things we can assume that will or won't be in Europa Universalis 5. The other stuff we really don't know about. And yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say about that. Release date, I'm still sticking on, you know, 2025 or 2026 or something like that. But yeah, me personally, I'm in the camp of, I don't want U5. I want U4 on an updated engine. But of course, let's give everyone the benefit of the doubt. You know, the track record, of course, recently hasn't been that good. Crusader Kings 3 launch was pretty good, I gotta say, but it's been left pretty bare bones after that. Victoria 3 people weren't a fan of, and let's not even mention the disastrous launch of Cities Skylines 2. Even though it's such an awesome game, the massive performance issues, even though it's not a game made by Paradox, it's still published by them. So yeah, people basing their expectations off of the recent couple of launches, I think people's expectations are pretty low, but not mine. Mine are pretty high. I do think these guys will knock it out of the park. I do think U5 is gonna have a good launch, even though it may feature or lack some things that I do really care about. But I guess it is what it is. So yeah, that's all I have to say about, you know, the launch of U4, the development of U4 up until today in these past few years. A little bit of my experience starting off being a content creator during the launch of Leviathan, the future of U4, and well, what we know about U5. But yeah, let me know in the comments below when you started playing U4. What's your favorite DLC? What do you think about, you know, what do you think about the future of U4, and what do you think about potentially being or not being in U5? And that's all I have to say about that. If you enjoyed this video, don't hesitate to leave a like. It really helps out a lot. And if you like the content and want to see more videos like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any of them. And you can become a member today and join the Discord. The link is in the description. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time with another EU4 video.